13. I've always liked the number 13 because the premise that goes with it, it's always been, considered unlucky, right? And, I'm always for the underdog. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go with the number 13. I've always liked it, even before I had a tattoo shop. If I ever had to pick a number for something, even in school, whatever, that was always the number I was drawn to. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go with that number. I've been tattooing now for 25 years. So a long time ago, when I finished high school, so I was young, right? I was actually a welder. Okay? I worked in a small fabricating shop in a small town called Argyle, Ontario. Very small place. And at that time, I had always been a good artist, right? So I've always been good at art, but I never applied my artistic ability to making money, if that makes sense, right? But anyways, I used to want to have these speakers, okay? These big, giant speakers. I wanted them so bad, but I could never afford them, okay? So I would go to the local pawn shops and I would check, ads in the paper and whatnot, like to try to find these speakers. They were called these E15 Cerwin-Vega speakers. They're like what they would have in a club, okay? These big, giant speakers, okay? So this one day I go into the local pawn shop and there they are. They're sitting there, okay? In the corner with like this halo of light over top of them, right? And I was super excited, right? Because I couldn't afford to buy these brand new. So I went to the guy behind the counter and I said, hey, listen, I really want these speakers. I've been looking for them for a long time. Will you save them for me until Friday when I get my paycheck and I'll come and I'll pick them up? And he's like, no problem. Takes a sticky note. Jesse. Sticks them on the speakers, right? So the rest of the week I was all happy, right? I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I'm getting these speakers finally on Friday. So back in the day when you had to cash your paycheck at the bank, right? This is a long time ago. I go to the bank, cash my paycheck. I go to the pawn shop, walk in the pawn shop, and I'm standing in the line at the counter. And the guy in front of me, he's trying to sell a tattoo kit, okay? So he's got this entire tattoo kit. It has the ink, the needles, like everything you need to do a tattoo. And he's trying to pawn it off to the pawn shop. And I'm waiting patiently in line. And the people behind the counter are basically telling him, we're not interested in that. We don't want it, right? So he leaves eventually, goes out the front door. And I step up to the counter and I say to the girl at the counter, I'm like, hey, I'm here to pick up these speakers. The guy's name was Neil. I was like, is Neil available, right? He's got some speakers set aside for me. So Neil comes around the corner and he's got this like look on his face. Like, what's up, right? Comes to the counter and he's like, the guy that was working yesterday sold your speakers. He's like, I'm super sorry. Like, I can't believe that happened, but he sold them. So I was devastated. Right? I was really upset. I was like, oh, that sucks. He's like, listen, if another pair comes in, I'll put them aside for you. No problem. So I didn't end up getting the speakers. So I went out the front door. And when I was standing in the front of the pawn shop, the guy with the tattoo kit, okay, was standing there. And he was waiting for a cab. And I knew at the time that tattoo machines and equipment was worth money, right? And I figured, hey, maybe if I buy this stuff off this guy, I could sell it or trade it, to my tattoo artist at the time, who was in Toronto. So I was like, this might be a good investment. So I asked the guy, I said, hey, what do you want for that tattoo kit, like this kit you have? He's like, well, I was trying to get $80 for it. I was like, I'll give you $60 for it. And he agreed to give me the $60, or to do it for $60. So I got the kit off him, I brought it home, put it in my closet. It stayed there for months and months. Then one of my friends called me and he asked me what I was doing the following weekend. And I said nothing. And he was like, do you want to go to the city and get tattooed. So I said, yes, for sure. I want to go do that. And when you're speaking to the guy, tell him that I have this tattoo kit and ask him if he'd be willing to trade for part of my tattoo work for all this tattoo stuff. So he got really excited and he's like, oh my God, you have a tattoo machine? I was like, yeah, I got it at the pawn shop like 6 months ago. He's like, I'm coming over. So he comes over to my house and he starts basically trying to convince me to tattoo him, right? And I want nothing to do with this because I have no idea what I'm doing as far as tattooing, right? So he bugs me and bugs me and bugs me. He's like, come on, just tattoo me. I know you do good tattoos. And if you mess it up, I'll get our friend in the city to fix it, basically. So I end up tattooing the guy. My other friend happened to be there, Jeff. He took a picture of me tattooing my friend Andre. So this is my first tattoo that I ever did, okay? Well, because I tattooed him, we ended up not going to Toronto, okay? A year after this photo was taken, I owned a tattoo shop. People kept coming to me, and I had to make a decision whether I would continue working as a welder or I would take the step to open my own business because I couldn't do both. I was staying up till 1 in the morning every night, tattooing people, and getting up in the morning every day at 5:30 to go work at the fabricating shop. So I made the choice. I decided, okay, I'm gonna transition and I'm gonna go to tattooing. So I opened my first shop over on Cambridge Street here. And yeah, so anyways, there's one other part of the story it's actually really, really cool. So 6 months after I opened my shop, okay, this guy comes in from the local college, okay, and he asks if he can get this half sleeve, right? And he wants to book a couple of appointments, but he's leaving and he's never coming back here. Okay, he's done his schooling. He's moving back to Calgary. He was only here for school and that's it. So he wants to be sure that I can tattoo him before he leaves. He doesn't want to start it and then not be able to finish it because he wouldn't be able to come back. So he asked me, I say, yeah, no problem. Because back then, I was only booked up for like 2 weeks, now it's 6 months. But so I agreed to tattoo him. I book him his appointments. And on his way out the door, he asked me if he can put a flyer on my bulletin board. I used to have a little bulletin board where you stick your business cards and stuff like that, flyers or whatever. Back in the day, the ones with the little rip-off phone numbers. Do you know what I mean? Like it has the phone number on there. You rip it off and call the number. So I'm like, yeah, no problem. He's like, he explains to me that he says to me, I'm selling all of my stuff. Okay, because I accumulated all this shit basically while I was here and I don't need it anymore. When I move back to Calgary, whatever fits in my truck is what I'm bringing home with me. So he puts it on the thing. It's fine. He comes in a week later for his first appointment. And when he comes in, he explains to me, he's like, I have to thank you. I was like, for what? He's like, every person that came to my house to buy stuff all said that they got the phone number and the address from your tattoo shop. I was like, well, that's great. I was like, well, what do you have left? He's like, I have like a weed whacker, this old fridge, some tools, a lawnmower, and these Cerwin-Vega speakers. So I'm like, what do you mean you have Cerwin-Vega speakers? He's like, yeah, I have the E7 or the E15 15-inch Cerwin-Vegas. I was like, man, I've been looking for those speakers for years. I was like, what do you want for them, right? He's like, well, I'll just trade you for part of my tattoo. I was like, that's amazing. Like, I've wanted these things forever, right? So anyways, I start tattooing him and I'm talking to him, right? Like, I'm like, where did you get these things? He's like, I got them at the pawn shop a year and a half ago. So my story is very strange, but it's very symbolic too, right? Because if that guy didn't buy those speakers, I wouldn't have bought the tattoo machine and the tattoo kit, and I wouldn't be a tattoo artist. I'd still be a welder in Argyle, at the fabricating shop. So sometimes things in life, they might not seem good at the time, sometimes there's a hidden meaning behind them. You know what I mean? In the future. So yeah, so that's how I started tattooing. Yeah. Some people don't get tattoos that have meaning behind them, right? They want tattoos to be decorative, let's say, right? Like you get a fancy paint job on your car, right? But the paint job itself, doesn't have meaning to you, but you like the way that paint job makes your car look. And then there's people that get tattoos that have lots of meaning behind them, right? Somebody can get a small tattoo that, represents, the loss of a person that they cared about or a pet or something like that. And that small tattoo has a lot of meaning behind it, right? And it helps people, right? Sometimes heal when tattoos have meaning behind them. You know how like in the world, most of the times, like if you went to Walmart or something, the customer's always right. The customer's not always right with tattooing, right? And the reason being is because there's limitations to, what you can do with tattooing. So for example, if somebody wants the Sistine Chapel, okay, but they want it the size of your thumbnail, it's not possible to do that, right? So there are restrictions, and sometimes you have to explain to customers that, you can't get a tattoo that needs to be this big and make it this big, because it'll just turn into a blob, right? Over time, even if you could pull it off, over time, tattoos, they're absorbed by your body and they fade out and the lines blur in them. So if you're trying to put too much detail into a tattoo that's, in a small space, just not going to turn it. Let's say I hired a new tattoo artist tomorrow, okay? And I've been tattooing for a long time. And I noticed something that new tattoo artist is doing that could be beneficial to my tattoo work. I would stay humble and I would ask them how they did it, even though I'm the one teaching them, right? There's always an advancement and there's always, not an advancement, there's always something you can learn from everybody, right? Even if they're not the best at something, they might have thought of something that you didn't, right? But the only way to ever gain that knowledge is to stay humble. I get paid to do tattoos, but it's not really a job to me, if that makes sense, right? So, and I do enjoy it. I come to work every day and I'm happy, right? I've never, some people, they wake up in the morning and they're like, oh, I just don't want to go to work today. I've never done that. Never once. Every day, smile on my face. I come in and I'm excited to be here, right? So, and that in itself is a blessing in life, right? Because, if you can do something that you are passionate about and something that you love and make money from it, you're really rich. Something you don't know about me. I'm married. I have 6 kids, 6 children, lots of kids. So, everybody says to me all the time, they're like, oh, you could go down to Toronto and, open a tattoo shop and make lots of money. But I'm not a city person. I prefer to live in the country. I'm a country sort of guy. And yeah, I like this life. The busy city life isn't for me. I like to visit the city. It's not a place I want to live. When I first opened my tattoo shop, I got like these letters put in my mailbox that were basically they were threatening but not threatening. Basically, they were religious. Yeah. How dare you,
you're sinning or you're...
Yeah, you're sinning, you're marking people and, you know what I mean? That's the work of the devil and stuff. And I'm like, oh, whoa, relax a little bit. But yeah, your body is the temple. Which, I mean, I get it. There's people that believe that. But I mean, we live in a free world, right? Yeah. So if you want to...
I think even when I started getting tattooed by you, it was bad for me sometimes.
Well, women, sometimes women, it's back then, I mean, not now, but women were really frowned upon, right? It's oh, girls can't get tattoos.
Yeah, exactly. My dad still hated it.
Yeah, but that's because he's... Oh, are you actually? Ah.